April 12, 1969. Tay Ninh Province, Vietnam. 17 a.m. The moon is little more than a faint silver shard above the tree line, its light swallowed by the dense canopy of the Cambodian border jungle. Humidity hangs like a wet cloth over the land. Insert fire support base. Henderson, most of the men of the 2/5th Cavalry are asleep, their cots arranged in uneven rows beneath sandbagged bunkers. A few sentries pace along the perimeter, wire boots sinking softly into the damp earth, M16s slung casually over their shoulders. The night is still eerily still. Then the jungle breathes. A faint rustle, a shift of shadow, a shape slipping between trees. Sergeant David Red Halpin pauses on his patrol, peering into the darkness beyond the triple-layered concertina wire. His flashlight stays off. He listens. Crickets drone. A generator hums behind him, the metallic clink of someone turning over in a cot. Nothing else. He exhales through clenched teeth. Probably nothing, he mutters, but it is not nothing. 20 meters beyond the wire, a man lies, pressed against the roots of a kapok tree face, painted black and green. His body is wrapped in a tight-fitting indigo vest, the kind soaked in pig fat, to help him slip through barbed wire without tearing flesh. On his back, a satchel charge, its fuse wrapped in oil-soaked cloth. In his hand, a pair of bolt cutters, their steel wrapped in strips of bicycle inner tube to silence the metal. This is Corporal Lê Minh Trong of the 429th Sapper Battalion, one of North Vietnam's most elite night fighters. He does not blink, does not move. Every breath is measured, his heartbeat steady. Around him, more shapes emerge. 8 men, each spaced exactly 5 meters apart, crawling silently like shadows given purpose. To U.S. forces, they are sappers. To the Viet Cong and NVA, they are Viet Cong, the special task units trained to infiltrate bases, kill sentries before they can raise an alarm and detonate explosives inside the most secure compounds. To the Americans on this base, they are the nightmare, rumored in whispers, the men who come in the dark, without sound, without mercy. Inside the wire, Halpin shifts his weight and yawns. He reaches into his shirt pocket for gum. His boot nudges a loose C-ration tin and it rattles softly. Out in the jungle, Trong freezes. The sound is faint, but to him, it's a flare in the night. He raises 2 fingers to his comrades. The line of sappers halts in perfect unison. They do not look at one another, but each knows the signal, wait, observe. Halpin hears nothing else. The gum wrapper crackles between his fingers. He starts chewing and resumes walking unconcerned. Trong lowers his hand. The operation continues. The sappers crawl forward until their chests press against the outer layer of razor wire. Slowly, silently, Trong threads his rubber-wrapped cutters between the coils. He squeezes. The strand parts with a nearly imperceptible snap. He works with mechanical precision, cutting 1, 2, 3 openings, just enough to slip through. Behind him, his second-in-command, Private First Class Juan Xuan Hoa, pulls a bamboo pole from his pack and extends it across the cut wire, pressing the coils down to create a narrow passage. Hoa's eyes never leave the sentry tower above, where a sleepy private sits with an M60 machine gun resting in his lap, head bobbing as he fights exhaustion. Trong signals again. The line of sappers melts through the opening. Inside the base, the first rank of bunkers looms only 50 meters away. Ammunition crates are stacked neatly beside them. A row of parked M113 armored personnel carriers glints under the dim perimeter lights. Targets everywhere. Sapper teams divide. One group slithers toward the artillery pit, their satchel charges swinging lightly at their sides. Another toward the fuel storage bladders. Another toward the command bunker. Trong's team heads toward the sleeping infantry barracks. Their mission is not random destruction. It is coordinated, shock-cripple communications, blind the artillery, sow chaos, and vanish before the Americans can mount a defense. He checks his timepiece. There are 2:23 a.m., 7 minutes until detonation. He quickens his crawl. Near the bunker entrance, a lone radio operator steps outside to relieve himself. He stumbles, rubbing his eyes, the cold air biting at his skin. He never notices the figure rising behind him until a hand clamps over his mouth and a sharpened sapper knife plunges just beneath his rib cage. The man's body goes limp before he can make a sound. The sapper dragging him into the shadows shows no emotion. This is routine, rehearsed, expected. He checks the blood pattern on his hands, wipes them clean, and returns to his position. The night is still silent. The base sleeps, but the jungle is awake. And in less than 7 minutes, every American inside Fire Support Base Henderson will learn why U.S. soldiers feared these men more than anything else in the night. It's 2:24 a.m., Fire Support Base Henderson. A low mist curls across the packed dirt pathways of the base. It hangs around the barracks like ghostly smoke softening the glow of the perimeter lights. Inside the command bunker, Colonel Warren Steele sleeps uneasily in his cot, a map of Tai Ninh province curled on the desk beside him. A half-finished cup of black coffee sits stone cold. Somewhere outside, a dog barks once sharp, startled, and then goes quiet. The sappers continue their crawl. Corporal Trong raises a clenched fist, signaling a halt. His nostrils flare, diesel fumes, gun oil, sweat, all of it carried faintly on the humid night air. Ahead of him lies a row of canvas tents where Bravo Company sleeps. Inside, the rhythmic rise and fall of dozens of chests creates a soft collective murmur. But just beyond those tents stands an obstacle no amount of stealth can ignore: a roving U.S. military police jeep. Its headlights are off. Its engine purrs quietly. The two MPs inside scan lazily across the base, unaware that death is 20 meters away. Private Howell leans forward, tapping Trong's boot once. His whisper is barely audible. Now or never. Trong nods. His hand slides to the worn wooden grip of his K-50M submachine gun, but he doesn't draw it. Gunfire is a last resort. Noise is the enemy. He motions to two men behind him. They split off, disappearing behind a supply shack. The jeep rolls forward, tires crunching faintly over gravel. The two sappers move into position, one behind a stack of sandbags, one crouched at the corner of a bunker. As the jeep passes between them, they strike. Two dark shapes converge on the vehicle. A hand clamps over the driver's mouth. Another loops around the neck of the gunner. Muffled grunts, a violent thresh. Then stillness. The bodies are pulled from the jeep and dragged beneath a tarp behind the sandbags. Eyes closed. Throats cut in one clean movement. The sappers take their dog tags and flashlights, then regroup with Trong. He checks his watch. 02:26 a.m. 5 minutes remain. The men move toward the ammo dump, stepping lightly across the ground to avoid stray tins, discarded tools, and the occasional metal peg jutting from the dirt. Their feet glide rather than walk. Their breath barely stirs the air. They are not intruders. They are phantoms. Up in the guard tower, Private Miller scratches his chest and squints across the darkened base. Something feels wrong. Perhaps it's the dog. Perhaps it's the stillness. Perhaps it's the nagging sensation every soldier in Vietnam eventually experiences, that the jungle is watching. He leans forward, gripping the mounted M60. The gun's cold metal feels reassuring. Then he sees it. A ripple in the shadows near the fuel bladders. He blinks, rubs his eyes. Another ripple. A shape, no two shapes, gliding where shapes shouldn't be. He opens his mouth, but Private Miller never gets to shout. Two sparks flash below him like tiny fireflies. The sound that follows is a soft whoosh. RPG-2 rockets streak upward at terrifying speed. The tower erupts in a ball of fire and splintered wood. Miller is thrown backward into the night sky, his scream cut short as he crashes into the dirt below. Every sapper freezes. The explosion wasn't planned for another 5 minutes. Trong whirls around, eyes blazing. Who fired, he hisses. But the answer is obvious, another sapper team acting prematurely. Maybe they saw a threat. Maybe they panicked. Maybe they wanted glory. It doesn't matter. The base is awake now. Inside the barracks, soldiers jolt upright. Boots slam onto the ground. Weapons are grabbed. Someone yells, "Incoming." Get up. Move. The calm night fractures. Lights crackle to life. Men spill out of tents, dazed, confused, clutching rifles. The smell of burning fuel wafts across the base as flaming debris rains down from the ruined tower. Colonel Steele bursts from his bunker, flak vest half buckled, .45 pistol in hand. "Status report," he shouts to anyone who can hear him, but no one can hear anything, because now the sappers rise from the shadows. The night explodes into motion, and the most feared fighters in the Vietnamese jungle, barefoot black-clad faces painted like death, launch their assault from inside the wire itself. 02:27 a.m., Fire Support Base, Henderson. The base is a storm of confusion. Men spill out of their bunks, half-dressed, fumbling with helmets, slamming magazines into rifles, shouting to one another as the sudden blast from the tower still rings in their ears. The ground trembles beneath them as fuel bladders ignite with a thunderous roar, sending orange flames clawing into the sky. Corporal Trong curses under his breath. Their advantage is slipping. Speed is now everything. He flicks 2 fingers forward. His sappers surge like a single body. They sprint low, weaving between shadows, each man knowing exactly which target to hit, as if they had rehearsed the layout of the U.S. fire base in their sleep, which in a way they had. For weeks, they studied diagrams drawn by scouts, memorized guard rotations, even learned the typical contents of an American ammunition bunker. Now they move through the real thing with deadly precision. Private Hoa breaks off toward the nearest howitzer pit. A lone American gunner tries to swing his M16 up in time, but Hoa is on him in 3 strides. He ducks under the barrel, slamming a sapper knife across the man's throat with a swift upward stab. The gunner collapses hands, clawing at the wound. Hoa doesn't watch him fall. He's already reaching into his pack. He retrieves a satchel charge wrapped in red cloth. He pulls the fuse. He tosses it into the ammo pit. The resulting blast is deafening, an eruption of sparks and shrapnel that sends a shock wave cutting across the base. Howitzer shells cook off in a violent chain reaction. Nearby men of Bravo Company are blown off their feet. Screams rise in the smoke. Trong pushes forward, leading his assault group straight for the communications bunker. He knows that if they sever radio capability, Henderson's defenders will be blind and isolated, unable to call artillery reinforcements or air support. He gestures for 2 sappers to flank the bunker. Inside, Specialist Rayfield is still scrambling to bring the PRC-25 radio online when a black-painted hand clamps over his mouth through the doorway. A knife slips beneath his jaw. His body jerks once, twice, then goes limp, sliding against the wall as another sapper kicks the radio off the desk. Trong enters behind them. He scans the room. A cot, a metal desk, a map of the area pinned to a board headset still crackling with distant static. He exhales sharply. Good. Communications are done. Back outside, U.S. soldiers are forming defensive lines. Sergeant Halpin, who just minutes earlier yawned on his patrol, now shouts orders as bullets zing overhead. Get to the south wall. Move, move. He drags a private toward cover, barely avoiding a burst from a K-50M as 2 sappers fire from behind an overturned water drum. The staccato clap of their submachine guns fills the air, raw and metallic. "Damn it, they're already inside the wire," Halpin shouts. Across the base, an M113 revs its engine. The driver, panicked but determined, tries to push the armored vehicle toward the burning tower to provide fire support. But before it gains momentum, a sapper sprints up from the side, leaps onto the hull, and slaps a block of TNT onto the vent grill. He dives away. The explosion shreds the engine. The M113 belches smoke, its crew scrambling out as flames begin licking around the hatch. Trong hears the blast. He doesn't need to look. His men are doing what they have trained years to do. Infiltrate, strike, disappear. But now American resistance stiffens. Rifles crack. Tracers streak across the night sky like red comets. A machine gun team sets up near the center of the base, the M60 spitting fiery arcs into the shadows where sappers dart between bunkers. 3 of Trong's men dive for cover pinned behind a toppled drum of diesel. They look to him. He gives a single nod. They break apart, one sweeping left, one right, and the third crawling straight toward the M60 team on his stomach. The gunner doesn't see the sapper approach until it's too late. A flash of steel, a choked scream. The M60 falls silent. But the Americans are adapting fast. Flanking fire erupts from a new angle. A squad of infantry rounds the corner of a tent, spraying the area with suppressive fire. Bullets crack against crates, tear through canvas, kick up sprays of dirt. Trong ducks behind a sandbag wall, the air whistling with deadly metal. He wipes sweat from his brow. Not from fear timing. Everything now depends on timing. He checks his watch. 02:29 a.m. 3 minutes behind schedule. The base is burning. Men are dying. But the window is closing. If they don't complete their objective soon, the Americans will rally, and the sappers will be trapped inside the wire with nowhere to run. Trong tightens his grip on his weapon. The next 3 minutes will decide everything. 02:30 a.m. Fire support base Henderson. The air is thick with smoke and burning diesel. Embers drift like fireflies across the darkened sky. The ground quakes under each explosion, tossing dirt into the air and filling every breath with grit. The screams of the wounded mix with the sharp volleys of gunfire, creating a chaos that threatens to swallow the entire base. Trong wipes a smear of dirt and sweat from his cheek, steadying himself. His team is now split across the base, each group pushing toward their assigned target's fuel artillery communications barracks. They have done what they came to do, but they are deep inside enemy territory. And the Americans are no longer confused. They are angry. From the northern wall, a burst of coordinated rifle fire cuts across the yard. Sergeant Halpin's hastily gathered squad pushes forward, taking positions behind sandbags and crates, firing controlled 3-round bursts. Their line grows tighter as soldiers from Bravo and Charlie companies join in, some still barefoot, some half-dressed, all gripping their rifles with white-knuckled desperation. On the left Movie, Halpin shouts, dragging a wounded private behind cover. They're trying to flank us. Then he spots something, a flicker of movement behind the wrecked M113. A sapper. He raises his M16 and fires. The sapper drops, instantly collapsing beside a crate. Halpin exhales sharply. His heart hammers in his chest. His ears ring from the noise. We've got to push them back, he mutters. They're everywhere. At the center of the base, Corporal Trong crouches beside a pile of shattered ammunition crates, watching the Americans advance with growing coordination. Their command is rallying. Discipline is returning. Firepower is building. He can feel the tide shifting beneath him. 2 of his men slide beside him, panting, their faces streaked with sweat and soot. Corporal 1 says, "We've hit all primary targets." "And the extraction route?" Trong asks. The man shakes his head. They've blocked part of it. Too many troops near the southern path. Trong's jaw tightens. The southern exit was their clean escape through the wire, a route they had cut silently hours before. Now it is swarming with Americans regrouping around the destroyed tower. There is only one option left. "Secondary route," Trong whispers. The men hesitate. The secondary route is risky, a narrow gap along the western wall, dangerously close to the machine gun positions the Americans are now manning. Still they nod. They are Viet Cong. This is the job. They rise and sprint. Bullets tear into the dirt at their heels as they dart between bunkers, moving like shadows flickering across the flames. Hoa emerges from the smoke to join them, his vest scorched, but his eyes still fiercely alert. He carries the last satchel charge. "Corporal," he says between breaths, "we need a diversion." Trong nods. "Set it. Give us 30 seconds. Hoa smiles faintly, grim determination in the curve of his lips. Then he runs. He darts behind a ruined supply shed, slipping into the darkness beyond 2 stacked fuel drums. The glow of fire outlines his silhouette as he kneels and pulls the fuse line. He whispers a prayer. Then he lights it. The fuse hisses softly, sparks dancing along the cord. Hoa sprints back toward the western route. Behind him, the drums detonate. The explosion is monstrous. A column of fire erupts skyward, blasting hot wind across the base. Americans dive to the ground. Sandbags rip open. Tents collapse. The blast knocks Sergeant Halpern off his feet, slamming him against a crate. What the hell was that? He yells, coughing and disoriented. The entire base is blinded by the blast for several long seconds. And that is all Trong needs. He raises his arm. Now, the sappers bolt toward the western wire, weaving through smoke and debris. Shots crack behind them. Tracers whip overhead, streaking red lines through the chaos. One sapper is hit in the back. Another drops to a knee. Trong grabs the wounded man under the arm and hauls him toward the cut section of wire where two sappers are already pressing the coils down with bamboo poles. More shouts erupt behind them, Americans closing in. Go, Trong yells. His men slip through the gap one by one, disappearing into the darkness of the tree line just beyond the base. Hoa reaches the opening and turns to cover the last man. But then a shout cuts the air. Contact left light them up. Halpern's squad opens fire. Ho ducks as bullets chew the dirt beside him. Trong shoves the wounded sapper through the gap and then turns, locking eyes with Hoa. Run! Hoa hesitates for a fraction of a second. Then he dives through the wire as Trong unleashes a burst from his K-50M, suppressing the American advance. The muzzle flash illuminates his painted face for an instant, an image burned into the eyes of the men charging toward him. Then Trong slips through the gap himself. The jungle swallows him whole. Behind him the base still burns. Ahead, darkness and escape. But Henderson is far from finished with them. 02:36 a.m., Western Perimeter, Fire Support Base, Henderson. The jungle looms like a black wall, dense, wet, alive. As the sappers slip beyond the wire, the humid night swallows them instantly. Leaves brush their faces. Branches snap quietly under bare feet. Somewhere in the canopy, a cicada chirps the sound, cutting sharply through the smoky haze drifting from the burning base. Corporal Trong moves at the front, guiding his men along a narrow path they scouted days ago. Sweat rolls down his temples, mixing with soot and blood. Behind him, Private Hoa supports the wounded sapper, practically dragging the man as he staggers through the undergrowth. But the Americans aren't letting them go. Inside the base, Sergeant Halpern pushes to his feet, ears ringing, eyes stinging from smoke. He can still taste burning fuel on the air. He spits it out and grabs his radio man by the shoulder. "Get me HQ, he barks. "We've got sappers breaching the west. I need a reaction squad now." The radio crackles with static. Faint voices. Broken transmission. The communications bunker is gone. Halpern curses. He rallies his men instead. "Bravo, Charlie. On me, we're going after them." A dozen soldiers fall in behind him, some limping, some coughing, all holding rifles with trembling adrenaline-fueled hands. They leap over debris, past burning tents, through a curtain of smoke that blots out the stars. They push toward the western wire. The twisted gap glimmers faintly where the sappers slipped out. Halpern kneels, touching the flattened bamboo poles, still warm from the sappers' hands. "Damn professionals," he mutters. He rises, jaw clenched. Into the jungle. Stay tight. Watch your spacing. They're fast, and they know the terrain. The reaction force plunges into the trees. The chase begins. Deep inside the jungle, Trong halts abruptly and raises a fist, signaling his men to stop. They crouch low, listening. Behind them, distant shouts. The crack of branches. Footsteps. The Americans are gaining ground. Trong looks at his wounded comrade. The man's breathing is shallow, each inhale shaky. The sapper's vest is soaked dark from a bullet wound that tore through his side. "We can't carry him much farther," Hoa whispers reluctantly. Trong's expression tightens. He kneels beside the wounded man, placing a steady hand on his shoulder. The sapper meets his eyes and nods weakly. He reaches for the last grenade on his belt and presses it into Trong's palm. A silent understanding passes between them. Trong closes his fingers around the grenade. Hoa looks away as the wounded sapper is gently propped against a tree. His back straight, his hand moving to his fuse cord with trembling determination. The squad continues forward. Moments later, a sharp crump echoes through the forest. Halpern's squad freezes at the sound rifles rising in the dark. "Grenade," someone shouts. Shrapnel whips through leaves above them. Birds explode from the canopy in a frantic storm of wings. The explosion's flash briefly illuminates the trees, just enough for Halpern to see a smear of blood on the bark and realize what just happened. They left him behind as a trap, a private mutters, shaken. Halpern's jaw tightens. Keep moving. 200 meters ahead, Trong pushes his team harder. Bushes claw at their clothing. Mud sucks at their feet. Mosquitoes swarm in clouds. Every now and then, one sapper ducks to check behind them, listening for the Americans. A distant whoop of a bird echoes to their right. Trong freezes. That is no bird. It's a hand signal call. He leans close to Hoa. They're trying to flank us. Hoa nods. We break left. Trong shakes his head. No, that's what they expect. He looks to the thickest part of the jungle, the area they intentionally avoided for being too dense, too treacherous, too slow. That way, he whispers, pointing into the near impenetrable brush. Hoa winces. Corporal, we'll lose speed. Trong's voice is steady. We don't need speed. We need silence. They push into the brush. Branches slap their arms and legs. Vines tug at their gear. But their footsteps vanish under the forest's natural cushion, moss-rotting leaves, wet soil. They disappear. Minutes later, Halpern's squad bursts into the same clearing the sappers had passed through. He scans the ground with a flashlight, sweat dripping from his brow. Tracks lead straight ahead. Keep moving, he orders. They follow the trail, but they miss the moment where the footprints veer left into the dense vegetation, barely noticeable, expertly concealed. The jungle has reclaimed the path of its ghosts. Trong and his remaining men slip deeper into the darkness. Breaths, soft steps, feather light. They are once again invisible, but dawn is coming, and daylight will expose everything. 4:52 a.m., the jungle border near the Cambodian line. The first pale streaks of dawn creep across the canopy, filtering through the tangled leaves in thin shafts of gray light. The jungle, once a cloak for the Viet Cong, is slowly losing its darkness. The chirping of insects grows softer as the nocturnal world retreats. A faint mist clings to the roots and tall grass. Every breath feels cool, heavy with dew. Corporal Trong crouches beneath a gnarled fig tree chest, rising and falling with measured control. His team gathers silently around him, only 5 men now. Their painted faces are streaked with smeared camouflage. Their vests torn, their hands shaking from exhaustion, adrenaline, and blood loss. Yet their eyes remain sharp. Behind them, far beyond the tree line, the faint glow of Fire Support Base Henderson still flickers against the horizon. Columns of smoke rise upward, blending into the morning sky like the remnants of a dying storm. They have survived the night, but survival is not guaranteed until they cross the border. Trong signals for movement, and the men slip forward through the dew-soaked grass. Each step is deliberate, each motion silent. They follow a narrow trail hugging a small stream that flows westward toward Cambodian territory. Their pace is steady, no longer a sprint, but a controlled march born from years of training. Hoa glances back every few steps. They'll stop soon, Trong whispers. The Americans won't chase past the line. Hoa nods, though worry lingers in his expression. They both know the truth. Fearless or not, sappers die often. But today, fate favors them. As they move deeper into the thickening brush, the sounds of pursuit grow distant. Halpern's men, still fanned out in the jungle behind them, slow their advance as the sky brightens. The faint rustle of boots, once a constant pressure on their heels, fades into the background of waking forest life. Finally, at a moss-covered ridge where old bomb craters collect rainwater, Trong stops. He lets the weight of the night settle over him. He motions for the men to rest. They do, sinking quietly to the ground. Hoa rips a strip of cloth and binds his own forearm where a bullet grazed him hours earlier. Another sapper unwraps his canteen, drinking sparingly. A third lights a single cigarette, the ember hidden behind his palm to conceal its glow. For a moment, the world is still. Trong listens to the steady flow of the stream beside him. He looks at his men, reduced in number, battered but alive. This is the true Viet Cong spirit. Not fearlessness, not brutality, but endurance. Precision, the willingness to move through the jaws of death because the mission demands it. When Trong finally speaks, his voice is low. "You did well, all of you." Hua lets out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "Did we finish it, Corporal?" Trong nods. The artillery pit is gone, the communications bunker destroyed, fuel blown, vehicles hit. Henderson will take weeks to rebuild. He pauses, and they'll remember us. Not for victory, but for fear. Back at Fire Support Base Henderson, Sergeant Halpin leans against a battered sandbag wall as medics rush past him. His camo uniform is streaked with ash. His helmet is dented. His eyes are tired, bone-tired, from a night burned into memory. The fires are mostly out now, smoldering in thick patches across the base. Charred tents flutter in the morning breeze. The twisted wreck of the M113 still glows faintly. Bodies, both American and Sapper, are lined under ponchos near the eastern wall. Halpin watches quietly as the colonel walks the perimeter, jaw-set hands, clasped behind his back as he inspects each site of impact. A private jogs up to Halpin. "Sir, we lost track of them in the dense sector." Halpin nods, wiping soot from his brow. "Yeah, they're ghosts in that terrain. Should we keep pushing west?" "No," Halpin says. "They're long gone." He looks past the wire toward the jungle, thick and still in the early light. A shiver crawls up his spine. They came in under our noses, killed silently, blew half the base, and walked away. He shakes his head slowly. "How do you fight men like that?" The private doesn't answer. There is no answer. Because this attack at Henderson, one of dozens across the long war, cements a truth whispered among U.S. troops. The Viet Cong are the jungle's deadliest ghosts. And when night falls, when the perimeter lights flicker, and when the jungle grows silent, every soldier, no matter how seasoned, feels the same chill down their spine. Fear of the men who move without sound. Fear of the shadows that kill. Fear of Vietnam's most feared night fighters.